27th at approximately 6:12 in the evening. And this is a meeting of the Law and Ordinance Committee. I'm Lynn Snee, the chair, and with me are Councilman Phillips and Councilman Sievert. And we have two items tonight. The first is to provide a recommendation to council regarding the Director of Public Service and Safety to execute a sole source government agency agreement with Flock Group Incorporated for a 24-month period to obtain an automatic license plate reading camera system at a cost not to exceed $57,150. And I understand, Chief McKinney, you might have information about this.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The request is for a stationary automated license plate readers. There's 9 that we are requesting. They would be placed in different locations throughout the city. What these license plate readers do is they read the plate, make, color, the time and date that the vehicle went by it, and it can also record, and you can search by different features such as a bumper sticker on that. We've had an automated an ALPR on one of our cruisers since 2010. This one was provided to us by Ohio Homeland Security, and we've used it off and on since that time without any issues. These cameras, they're not speed cameras. They're not red light cameras. We're not going to do traffic enforcement with these cameras. There's no facial recognition capabilities with these cameras. What these cameras do is they can have alerts on things like wanted vehicles, not wanted people, wanted vehicles, vehicles that are entered for Amber Alerts. We'd also get a hit on those. Mainly, they'd be used to solve crimes. They provide leads. They're not necessarily an end-all to solve the crime, but they provide us with leads. Some of the protections that'll be in place to make sure that they're not misused by our officers is that they can only be used for law enforcement purposes. This is a policy and procedure for the Troy Police Department, and it's also encoded in state law through leads violations. You cannot run a vehicle through leads without it being a violation of both state law and our policy. In addition, our administrators will be able to audit people's searches if we would suspect any kind of misuse of the system. The data that is stored by these cameras are owned by the City of Troy. They're not owned by Flock. They don't distribute this data in any way. And the retention period for this camera data is 30 days, and then it's automatically deleted. We became aware of these cameras. I became aware of these cameras about the summer of last year. And Montgomery County granted some of our officers access. There's sharing agreements in place that you can set up with these. And I ran a case of how many times we had used the cameras and the Montgomery County cameras from the summer till October, and we had used them 18 times to develop leads in that short amount of time, using cameras far placed outside of our city. The cameras will also work in connection with those purchased by the Sheriff's Office. I believe he has a contract to purchase 8. Tip City already has installed and working 9. The Park District, I believe they have 5, and West Milton has 2. I believe that's just in process right now. Our placement will be on West Main Street and West Market near the interstate. We're proposing one on East Main Street near the Corporation line, North Market Street, one by the river, and one up by Troy-Urbana, and one on East Staunton Road. The examples that the camera system that the company provides are numerous. One of the ones I was looking that kind of caught my eye was recently it was used in Chamblee, Georgia for an Amber Alert. The Amber Alert was put out at 12:33. By 6 o'clock they had a suspect in custody. Our salesman has described several examples to me in Ohio of serious traffic crashes where a victim may get a description of the vehicle but not a license plate, but then the license plate is picked up as the vehicle flees the scene, which gives the officers a lead. Otherwise, we'd be waiting for, the media to hopefully pick up on that, or through our media pages, social media pages, to ask the public for people's help in identifying that vehicle. Other examples that the company gives that they've had a lot of success with: catalytic converter thefts, missing persons, bank robberies, and we've used it several times for shopliftings out in the West Main Street area. Probably the most recent, most interesting success story we had this year is we had a gentleman in town here report his car stolen. The officer used the flock cameras, mainly in Montgomery County, to try to track if any of the cameras picked up his stolen car. They got a couple of different hits through additional interviews and leads. They were able to determine that the owner was under the influence of alcohol, wrecked his car in Montgomery County, and then tried to make a false police report to us, and it resulted in charges of making a false police report to us. So it's just one example of how it can be used, or was used recently.
So if I'm understanding this, this recording is taking place, but the system allows an officer to search through that data to try and find a match to a license plate number, description.
Yeah. So on a fairly frequent basis in our roll call room, you'll see vehicle pictures from business surveillance cameras, ring surveillance cameras, or maybe just descriptions from victims that saw the vehicle but didn't actually get the license plate. We will then be able to go back and say it was a red Chevy that they saw stealing from their car parked on the street overnight. The officer can then check our flock cameras and the surrounding agency's flock cameras for all red Chevys that were leaving or coming into that area in the time frames that they feel were appropriate. It'll provide us license plates, and then those leads can be followed up on.
Interesting.
So how many are we buying?
The proposal is for 9. They're a 2-year lease at $3,000 per camera.
And is there an
Per year.
option to purchase after the lease, or is
There is
leasing
not.
how you
There is not.
do that? Okay.
It is entirely a leased system throughout.
Is the price we're paying comparable to, is Flock doing the county?
Yes, yes,
And is it consistent throughout the whole,
yes.
They're the only ones that do this.
they're the only provider?
There are approximately, I believe they're closing in on 2,000 cameras in the state of Ohio.
Dayton has quite a few. Springfield.
Not sure about Springfield. Dayton and Montgomery County, I know, sheriff's office.
Carrollton, I believe, just did them. Miamisburg, maybe.
Yeah, but we've relied heavily on Vandalias in Montgomery County. They catch a lot of the people going southbound on the interstate from Troy.
Thank you. So all maintenance updates on software or hardware issues are handled through Clock at no additional optional charge?
Correct. We did question them about any intentional damage done to them, because if I saw down in Montgomery County, they had one intentionally damaged, and that would fall back on our insurance.
Okay. Do we have to give any notice to the public that they're entering an area and may be monitored or anything like that?
No. I mean, these are pictures of that I could place an officer out there right now with a camera and take the exact same picture.
And they're all in the public venue anyway, so it's
correct.
Open. I think that's all I have at the moment.
Okay, thank you. But they're property of the city, so they would be a public...
The data is property of the city.
So they would be a public record.
That would be a question I would have for Grant.
Okay.
If a public record request was made for very specific vehicles or types of vehicles, that is not something we would necessarily have already searched, so I think I would defer to Grant to see if we would be required to do a search.
So
because I'm not opposed to it, I'm just trying to see the relevance of it. So if I'm at, I don't know, driving north on Market Street and pull out in front of somebody and he flips me off, I can go back and see whose car that was that flipped me off by asking a public records request for any and all black Jeep Cherokees that pulled out in front of somebody on Market Street between 2 and 3.
Well, since you don't have access to run the plate, I don't think you'd be able to identify the person, and we wouldn't run the plate for you because we're not doing that for a law enforcement purpose.
But that's what I'm asking, but it'd be a public record.
But, and that's what I'm getting to, is that there's no data that exists for you unless you do a search. Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, there are the hits.
But it's replacing every 30 days.
So if it's a stolen vehicle, if it's an Amber Alert, then yes, I mean, that information we actually get notified about if it passes one of these 9 cameras.
Remember, it's automatically deleted after 30 days.
After 30 days, right.
So let me give you a better example. So, I don't know, some kids toilet paper somebody's house, and so rather than, I mean, they could technically call you up and say, hey, my house on Fleet Road just got toilet papered. I want to look and see what cars went past whatever your closest little ALPR or whatever they're called are. I want to know what license plates went past between 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock because I'm going to make my kid tell me what one of his friends came in toilet paper.
I don't think a citizen can do that.
Well, no, it's a public record. They have to. That's my point.
I think
You would
it's the
need
law
to make
enforcement
a police report for criminal mischief, and then the officer would investigate that as a criminal
their
mischief.
investigation.
And if they were able to develop a suspect, then that would be the public record. I don't necessarily think we would want to get into this, but then again, like I said, I want to defer to Grant for a public records law.
So you don't think the taking of the picture every time creates a public record?
I'd defer to Grant.
Okay.
Until we actually search for that record because of a police report is made, or it's a hit, I wouldn't want to comment until
But the picture's being made.
The
Every
picture is
single
being
person
made.
who drives through that, well, not for 30 days,
Right.
but every single person walks through that, their license plate is getting hit.
But we're not searching it, or we're not saving it on our servers until we want to do an investigation into whatever crime has been committed, if a crime has been committed. So we're not actually searching that database at all until a crime is reported.
Okay. And then the other thing, and I think Mr. Tiddington's already spoken with you on this, but I would note, because the memorandum is different, we're not seeking emergency on this so that we can get public input at the meeting, and that's been conveyed to you, and you're okay with that, correct?
Yes, yes.
Any other questions?
No, ma'am.
Any other council members? Mr. Whidden?
Can we talk about where is the data going to be kept, like locally, or is this cloud-based?
It's cloud-based.
I see, so, yeah. Do they have any audits to confirm that they do wipe their servers? I mean, there have been numerous stories of very high-profile internet security companies that do not do that, so I'm wondering how this company can prove that they do that.
Well, I guess, if we had the system, we could search for something that was 31 or 32 days old, but they do have the ability, depending on our request, to either increase or lower that retention period. So we could go to them and say, we want a 60-day retention period because of occasionally we don't become a crime until, 70 days later.
So, with that in mind, John Smith is a regular law-abiding citizen for 29 days. On the 30th day, he commits a crime. You can go back and see all of his movements for the last 29 days to maybe develop some type of pattern of behavior he did.
So we're looking for that vehicle. When we search for him, we will be able to tell whenever he went past any specific camera. The searches can be, focused down to specific time periods, because we really don't want to know, how many times he went to the grocery store in that 30 days. We're interested in that specific crime. So if we know we had a shoplifting at 3 p.m., we're going to be looking at a time frame around that 3 p.m. time of when they fled from the scene, and possibly if we think they're from, especially if we think they're from out of the city, when they came into the city, and if they passed any of those cameras.
But let's keep in mind, correct if I'm wrong, in that case, it's only saying that the vehicle had that pattern, not necessarily that person. We can't assume that person is driving that vehicle every time. It's just saying that the pattern is based on the vehicle, not necessarily based on the person.
But if it's taking bumper stickers, you can make an inference, possibly, of who's in the car. It has that type of resolution.
Well, no, we can't make an inference. I mean, we cannot make an inference. We investigate crimes all the time with, the first contact, if a vehicle is involved, is the owner. And people tell us all the time, I wasn't driving the car. So we cannot necessarily make that step without evidence.
From the information I've seen, the pictures I've seen, these look to be solar powered, or?
Yes, they come with an option, hardwire them too.
Are we gonna hardwire, are we gonna solar power, do we know?
I've discussed that with Jill. There's 2 locations that we might be able to hardwire it. They claim that if they're fully charged, that the battery will last for 7 days. But it is possible if you have several cloudy days in a row and it's the winter time that you could temporarily use power to one of the solar powered ones.
Other cities that are using the system, is it basically do they have to get any type of, is it just a tip city, hey, we'd like to check your cameras or something? They just come and ask, do they need a warrant every time to check our cameras, or?
It's basically a user agreement that we specifically allow different agencies permissions, and that's based upon my authority and my permissions. So if Tip City contacts us and says, we'd like to give, and it's password protected, it's username and password protected for us to give permission, and then that would be reciprocated.
So we can assume most local, state, and federal agencies would probably have that permission generally?
I'm not familiar with any state or federal agencies using these. It's mainly local agencies.
But if they wanted to check, they would have. That's all I have for now. Thank you very much.
Any other council members, questions?
I'm still trying to understand the utility of this, because you're not going to be able to tie it to the driver unless you unless you pull the driver over subsequent to that. But you're not going to review these contemporaneously with them being shot. So you can't pull over the driver 2 days later and say, oh, were you involved? I mean, I guess you can for investigation purposes, but you're not going to be able to prove that that was him driving. So you're not going to get like a red light, oh, this car just went through this intersection and there's a warrant out for the owner of this car, right? Because you're not going to search them that frequently.
The example I would use would be the Amber Alert. If there's a vehicle associated with an Amber Alert, officers that are on duty are going to get a notification if that vehicle passes one of our cameras.
So
it's nowhere related to a red light. It's not related to any kind of traffic signal at all. So it doesn't pick up speed, it doesn't pick up...
So how many Amber Alerts have we had in Troy, Ohio, and in Ohio in the last 2 months?
Troy, we have not issued any in the last 2 months.
But that doesn't mean somebody has
Hold on, Patrick, let me finish. So are you going... So let's go to an outstanding warrant issue. Is something going to trigger that license plate number XJ6621 has an outstanding warrant, and then the cop's going to be able to go pull that person driving that car over?
If the warrant has a vehicle attached, which most...
To me, I'll just say, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, but to me, this seems like just another tool for when somebody makes a police report and says, I saw this black Chevy Malibu, or name the car, got part of a license plate involved in this thing, then this becomes another tool to help investigate that vehicle being in that place or perhaps another place. I don't think it's necessarily
If I may
tied
go back-
to a person, because oftentimes something would happen, and I might be able to give a description of a vehicle, but not a person. And the investigation would start based on that vehicle description.
Yeah, but that's not,
I would go
Lead to
to the shooting we had in the park last summer. We had video that showed several different vehicles that were close to where the shooting occurred. We could tell the color, we could tell the make, we could tell the style. Some were pickup trucks, SUVs, some were cars. Had we had these cameras in place when that happened, we could have searched for those makes, those models, and those colors. Instead, we had to reach out to the public through our social media accounts, and the local media picked those up. And they did end up providing us with tips. We also took months to issue several kinds of search warrants, such as a geofence warrant, that helped us determine what cell phones were in that area. Had anybody passed one of our cameras, we would have had a license plate immediately. It ended up that one of the vehicles that were there at the scene was picked up by a flock camera in Dayton, which helped with this investigation because we knew the location and the time and the date it was down in Dayton.
philosophically, I'm not opposed to the tools, and I see that. I guess I'm just trying to weigh $60,000 for 2 years, $30,000 a year, basically, for this versus $30,000 a year for maybe something that would be a little more used, I guess. But, I mean, we can try it for 2 years. We're only tied in for 2 years, right?
I would look at it, and a lot of people have described it, and it makes being able to find these suspects and these leads a lot quicker and faster, instead of, countless hours, man-hours of, searching other databases. An example that the salesman gave me out of a hit skip, it was out of northeastern Ohio, that the person had a partial plate, to do a partial plate through leads, and they had a vehicle description. Takes a lot of time. So if you can imagine how many blue Chevys there are that start with, or have the last 2 or 3 numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4. And you're usually going to limit that to Ohio plates. Luckily, the flock camera picked up the suspect in this serious hit-skip accident, leaving the scene. It was an out-of-state plate. The police chief of that department credited Flock to solving this case, and the countless man-hours they would have spent doing a partial plate search for that vehicle would have been all for nothing because of it wasn't an in-state plate.
Mr. Phillips?
To me, the child abduction, the 2 twin boys recently, and they were found in multiple locations. And you never know where these types of victims may wind up. And having one of those, whether the child or persons wind up here or not, it's still, in 10 years, the cost is worth it to find potentially one of those victims. So it's just an investigative tool. That's all it is. And it's cheap at twice the price in my book.
Any other questions from council? From audience members? If not? Oh, yes, sir.
I'm going to
You
speak
can
up.
state your name.
People to show up this council meeting.
If you could just state your name and address, please, for the record.
I'm Steve Hendrickson. I live at 975 Dickerson Drive. This is more than a license plate reader. It's a vehicle reader. If you're saying you can catch a blue Chevy and everything else, you're catching a heck of a lot more than a license plate.
The technology is called license plate reader, automated license.
Well, you can call it what you want, but I'm going to call it a camera that's taking a picture of the entire vehicle. Right?
Generally the back or the front.
Okay. It's more than the license plate. The other question I've got is, is there somebody gonna be sitting there at the central computer looking at all this stuff? Or can you enter information that says, okay, when this license plate shows up, there's an alert and then it wakes everybody up? The reason I'm saying that is I worked in a place where we had security cameras. If you can think of a worse job in the world than there is looking at a security camera and looking for something that may or may not have happened, it is the most boring job in the world. And I would hope that you've got more things to do than that.
So the officers will receive an alert when they log into the system. So the officers on duty will log into the system, and if a vehicle that is entered, and it's similar to our current license plate reader.
Right, so the point is, if somebody has entered into the system, keep an eye out for this. There'll be an alert the next time somebody logs on, right?
Well, officers should be logged on while they're working in their cruisers, so they will receive an alert in real time when that car passes that camera.
Okay, so every car in the department is gonna get that alert?
Yeah, it's a web-based system, so they'll log into a website, basically.
Okay, so that happens automatically, or somebody has to be a human being there to trigger this, or will the system do it automatically?
Automatically.
Okay, so we're not having somebody.
I don't think somebody is sitting there watching it. It's information that's entered, and then it pings back an alert. Am I correct with that?
Yeah, I was gonna say, we're gonna spend $30,000 to have somebody make a lot of money.
But that's the kind of
sitting there doing
information they
nothing.
would be entering for investigations anyway, or something from another system like an Amber Alert or...
Solar cars.
Right.
Okay, that's my only concern.
Thank you.
It's just a misnomer.
Any other questions? How do you wish to proceed?
I would like to hear if there's any community and input from this, and I appreciate the cooperation with regards to that. For a 2-year period to see how it goes, I don't have any problem moving forward.
Moving forward?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
And it's unanimous to move forward with this, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. The second item, let me still involve you. The second item is that council authorizes the Director of Public Service and Safety to authorize a sole source purchase for storage related to the Troy Police Department body camera system at a cost of up to $71,790, and this, I understand, is grant funding for this. So, Chief McKinney, do you have any other information on this?
Correct.
System?
We purchased our body-worn camera system from Motorola Solutions. It was a independent company called WatchGuard that Motorola Solutions bought. They're still under the WatchGuard name. When we purchased it, it came with X amount of storage that they recommended through their computer-generated models, and we are filling up that storage fairly quickly. So last year, towards the end of the year, the state had a grant that made it available to expand or get body cameras. I asked for additional body cameras, I asked for storage, and I asked for some of our clerks' time to be compensated for records requests. The state granted the additional storage, they denied the additional body cameras and the salary for our records clerks. So with this already approved, it's approved for the $71,790. I believe that the quote, for some reason, the salesman that quoted me the $71,790, the current quote came in a little bit less. So, but it will be covered by the grant from the state after we purchase it and a reimbursement.
What is the requirement for length of retention of body camera footage?
So, again, we keep most routine stuff that's not associated with a criminal charge for 30 days. Anything that is a crime, we're supposed to keep for 8 years.
Okay.
So that's a lot of body cam video.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Titterton.
Just to add that we need to spend this money by the end of June. That's why we are asking for emergency legislation.
Okay. Any questions?
No. Thank you for trying to get the grants, that's good.
Yes, Mr. Wood.
Again, kind of similar to the last question, do we keep this on-site storage, or is this cloud-based?
That is on-site.
This is on
The servers are on-site.
Okay. Do we know what resolution the camera is recording in? Is it high definition or not? I mean, I imagine that can get very big at times.
Yeah, it's high definition, I believe. When we purchased this camera system, our body-worn camera and our in-car cameras are integrated, so when you pull them up, you actually see 4 different views. What you see when an officer wears a body cam is his body cam. You see a car camera, a standard view. You see a wide panoramic type view from the front camera. And then there's a camera that faces the back seat for any prisoners that are in the back.
So at the end of every shift, every officer has to take out all their data cards, memory cards, and hand them in for...
It's uploaded automatically. So it's when the officers either put the body-worn camera back in the cradles that charge them, or when the cruisers are sitting back behind the police department, that's all Wi-Fi.
Any other questions?
Who reviews that then to determine what gets 30 days and what gets 8 years?
The officers are responsible for labeling their own incidents. Once they label it, or once they say that this is like an OVI, it's automatically kept. So we also have sergeants who randomly check that. On a quarterly basis, a sergeant will go in and just select some random videos to make sure that they're within compliance, that the officers are labeling them correctly and doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Any other questions from anyone in the audience? If not, what is your pleasure on this?
No, again, I applaud you for seeking out grants, and 1 out of 3 is not bad. You'd be a millionaire if you hit the ball 1 out of 3 times, so that's good job, Chief. Move forward. As an emergency.
Simply just move forward.
Okay. It's unanimous then to move forward with emergency, and I don't believe there's anything else to come before Law and Ordinance, so we are adjourned.
I'd also
Thank you.
give credit to Nikki Reese with our development department, who helps quite a bit with the writing of these grants.
Thank you.